In Business and Labor this morning, we heard 4 bills, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of them. One was House Bill 264, which would allow senior centers to have bingo games without having to have a gaming license. And what was so disturbing was that one of the members on committee questioned a proponent of the bill. She was this woman from AARP who got up there and said, "Please, senior citizens, just enjoy a little bit of nickel and dime bingo, and it lifts our spirits and gives us a chance to make friends and visit with each other and have something fun to do and gives us something to look forward to." And a guy on committee calls her back up to the stand and basically accuses her of being a sinner and asks her if there were other activities that they could be doing, like singing and playing the piano, that perhaps would be a little bit healthier. It was disturbing. And so another bill, House Bill 321, extends the amount of time that extends the window in which crimes you've committed can be put on your credit report. And so now employers can pull a credit report if they tell you that they're going to do that. And right now, anything that's on your record for the past 7 years can go onto that credit report. And this would open it up. So anything you've ever done from the time you were born, if you were convicted of a crime or were arrested for anything, rightly or wrongly arrested for anything, would go on your credit report. And the argument for this is that it puts us into compliance with federal law. So the same people who hate federal law, want to secede, want to nullify federal laws, now will use the argument, oh, well, we really should be in compliance with federal law. So I'm giving this today's, really? I happened to run into Rick the Happy Plumber in the halls of the Capitol today. He hadn't called. He hadn't, let me know that he was coming up. I think he was going to sneak around the halls of the Capitol. And when I asked him, he said, "Oh, well, I just didn't want to bother you. I knew that you'd be so busy." And so I'm telling you, if you're at the Capitol, it's going to hurt my feelings if you don't call me and at least say hi. We have time for you. I have time for you. And so it was so great. We got to walk across the street and have lunch with another representative and some folks that we know from really all around the state, and I was able to take him up to the governor's office and see McCall. The governor was there and came out and shook his hand and actually let us go and look at his actual office where he works, which doesn't happen all the time, and it's just so good to see a Butte face. I'm going to give a little update on my lottery bill. So right now in the Education Committee, there are 2 bills that basically spend the same money, and they're going to have to combine them or pick one of them. Mine takes the lottery money and puts it in the hands of students. And today I got a tip that on Monday in the Independent Record in Helena, on the front page, there had been an article about how poorly Montana does as far as providing state scholarships for its students wanting to go to state universities. And so I photocopied that and wrote "Vote for House Bill 166" and gave it to the Secretary of the Education Committee so that she will distribute that to everyone's desk. They'll have that tomorrow when they go to committee. That's the kind of like behind the scenes stuff that I guess you do to get a bill passed. I'm still learning all of this. The floor session today, we heard the Senate Joint Resolution 2. It was on brown paper and was printed sideways, and it estimates the revenue that we have to spend for the next 3 years. And if you remember from last session, this was a huge fight. And so I was glad that it came to committee and it got passed on second reading. And you can see that the initial numbers, can you see? The initial numbers that they estimated have been crossed out, and then new ones have been put in and underlined. That's because in committee, the members said, well, we don't really agree with that, and we think we're going to have more money. And so after all the back and forth, these are the numbers that they came up with. This document tells us how much money we actually have to spend or give back or invest, whatever word you want to call it, during this session. And so you can find that online. It's Senate Joint Resolution 2. We heard a bill, House Bill 49, to exempt make military pensions completely tax exempt. That sounds like the best bill in the whole world. How could anyone vote against that? Well, I did. And, I really feel like this bill was brought, even though they know that it doesn't economically work. It was brought by people who have vowed to never spend any money. They've told their constituents they won't spend any money. And it has a fiscal note of tens of millions of dollars every year, and they say, well, we disagree with that. We think that there's a conspiracy in the fiscal division, and they're trying to keep this bill from passing. Literally, they think there's a conspiracy to keep the bill from passing, and that the fiscal note is wrong or altered somehow. The fact is that we already have an exemption in Montana for anyone whose annual benefit from their pension is like $33,000 or $36,000 or less. And this would only affect people who are really at the top of the income bracket. And I also kind of think that they wanted us to have to vote against it for completely logical reasons, for messaging, and then also hoping that the governor would have to veto it. So it's just kind of like putting us between a rock and a hard place. I could be wrong about that. Maybe there's not as much conspiracy to it, but that's what it looks like to me. And oh, by the way, it's against federal law to do that. So we heard House Bill 215 today, which basically makes us have a Montana state gun. And you might want to look at the place in the Montana Code where it lists our state bird and our state flower and our state tree and our state fish. It's Title I, Chapter 1, Part 5, and this would add the state gun. And the sponsor really did try to bring this in a way that would make everyone happy and get it passed. And he talked about the historical perspective. But truly, the historical perspective is that this gun, yes, had a huge historical role in our state. But he said Montana was a lawless frontier before this gun. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't lawless frontier before this gun. This gun was also used to massacre, not in battles, but to massacre our first people in the state of Montana. And it was also used to decimate everything that lived on the plains, so no one had anything to eat. And that is part of Montana's history, I agree. But it's not necessarily a history that we want to celebrate by making this our official state gun. And today was the first time where you saw people speak against a bill and minds were changed. I really think that bill would have passed, and that Representative Leah Whitford and Representative Pease Lopez, who spoke against the bill, actually reached some hearts and changed some minds. And I'm not sure that'll happen again for the rest of the session, and it definitely happened today. So their hope springs eternal. I wanted to show you guys House Bill 251 because it's an example of compromise happening in committee. Everyone agrees that there's kind of an issue with absentee ballots getting mailed out 30 days ahead. It's for several reasons, it makes it difficult. And so there was a bill brought to change that to, you can see they crossed out 30 and changed it to 20. And the members in committee kind of thought that 10 days less was too short. And so in committee, they compromised. They crossed out the 20 and wrote 25 there. So if this gets through the Senate, absentee ballots will be mailed out 25 days before the election instead of 30, and that prevents this kind of weird overlap that happens, and it'll make the whole system better. And last but not least, we heard House Joint Resolution 2 today, and it was supported by people who either don't understand how our country works or are just flat out obstructionist. It's a joint resolution that says that the Montana Senate and House of Representatives want the president to follow our Constitution as long as it's constitutional. This is the biggest waste of time we've seen so far, and it passed. And so I guess maybe I have to give another, really? I had something new on my desk today. It was a bill that was passed all the way through the Senate, House Bill 92, and it was in triplicate, and I looked at each copy to make sure that it's exactly what I wanted, and it also had this note attached to it from the office of the governor saying, hey, if the governor does decide to sign this into law, do you want to be there and take a picture with him and get the pen that he signs it with. And I called the number and said, yeah, I really want to do that. And she said, wow, you're the first one who's called. And so I'm looking forward to, hopefully the governor will sign the House Bill 92, and I'll get to go do a little political photo op with him. That'll be something that I'll post when I get it. When I got home today, I was feeling so tired, and I got a phone call that really lifted my spirits from a guy in Butte who has just been to DC, and he was just calling to say, hey, you know, I met some politicians in DC, and I just wanted to call and tell you that I'm so glad there's a normal human being in politics, and we're really excited about you and excited for you, and glad that you're representing us. And I can't tell you how much it did to lift my spirits. So if you're watching this and you have a representative that you think is doing a good job, call their cell phones online. Call them and tell them that they're doing a good job. I really can't say enough about how much that did to lift my spirits. It's going to get me through the rest of this week at least. So thanks for that. See you tomorrow.